This dream that is ours. This dream that the world can wake up to itself through rapturous respect and radical reverence. This yearning for love, this unfurling request for tender living. This is not too much to ask. For this is the way of the soul, when we let sunlight ripple in our mind and the breezes teach us how to touch. When we let the gaze of the deer fall softly into our eyes, and the salmon's steady returning remind us how to bow to our beginnings. When the forest floor finally shows us how to share, and the steady patience of the trees seeps into the curve of our own spines, we shall fall softly into the dance of our own becoming and recognize ourselves in all things living. But first, we must bow and allow the remembering that paves the path home to reverence. So breathing and allowing. Feeling ourselves stepping into circle all over the world. Thank you for joining us. Over to you, Alyssa.
I'm so honored to be with you all here today. As Claire shared, we're here for an exploration and discussion on what we're coming to call here at TreeSisters nature-based feminine philanthropy. My name is Alyssa Wright, and I'm so humbled to be the philanthropic advisor to all of those within the TreeSisters community, and also a humble servant and philanthropist within my own right to help this extraordinary mission grow and design itself next. I'm thrilled to be facilitating this conversation with you all. We're going to take a deeper look together at how philanthropy can play a critical role in our understanding and how we radiate our gifts out into this world on behalf of the forests and the feminine. Today, we're going to be asking questions that we don't often get to ask, whether in the world of philanthropy or activism or our regular day-to-day. Such questions might tend to be somewhat difficult and deep for all of us, but we're thrilled that you're here to do this together with us in sisterhood. The question that I'm most looking forward to exploring with you all is, why do we protect money instead of choosing to protect life? And starting to think about our relationship to each other, to the earth, and to money, because it's something that we all need to think through thoughtfully to decide what comes next, not only for our planet, but also for our own evolution. So I would love to start while I'm giving a brief overview by having everyone chat in today. If you'd like to join us with your name and where you're dialing in from, so we can really get a sense of everyone all over the globe being with us today. And then I'd love to just briefly introduce our CEO, Amrita Khalsa. Amrita, do you want to share with everyone where you are in the world today? Oh, Amrita, I think you're on mute.
I was on mute. Thank you. It's wonderful to be here with everyone. Thank you for coming. And I'm currently in Ontario, Canada, on the shore of Lake Huron.
Love it. And we also have with us Sophie Jane Mortimer, our Director of Communications. Sophie, want to say hi and where you're at?
Hey, thank you, Alyssa. Yes, I am representing here in England. I'm in Sheffield in the UK, and it's such an honor to be here. Thank you.
I love it. I guess I should say where I'm at. I'm up in York, Maine, not too far from Amrita, and I went for a walk on the beach about an hour ago and got to kind of watch the waves rolling in and settle myself into this time and space for our call, because this is also part of my own journey. being in the world of philanthropy for almost a decade now. And so I'm so looking forward to everything that's discovered on this call and how it can change not only someone like myself who's out advocating and helping people in their own philanthropy, but also all of us in terms of how we define the word and the idea and how we really do this work. So I'm going to do a brief overview of how we're going to spend the next 53 minutes together. Oh, Amrita.
I have some people to share that are writing in. And,
oh, great.
And also, where is Clare Dubois?
Clare Dubois is in...
Clare who?
Clare is in California, in Mill Valley today, and about to drive back up to the mountains. And there are people all over the world. I'm stunned by how far and spread out we are here. Are you going to read them out, Amrita?
Yeah, I'm just going to share a few. We have Esther from the Netherlands, Amsterdam. We have Amy from Harrisonburg, Virginia in the United States. We have Katie from rainy Olympia, Washington in the luscious Pacific Northwest of the USA. And Jane from snowy South Dakota. And I can see many, many more of you here as well from all over the world. Welcome.
It's amazing. Denmark, Sweden, Oregon, South Carolina, Somerset, all over England. Another Denmark. Stoke-on-Trent, UK. Yay, go Stoke-on-Trent. Betula, what a fabulous name.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Oh, so
Scotland. Woo, Scotland.
Oh, I love it. So, great. So thank you all so much for being with us. I just want to give, again, a brief overview of what we're going to be doing today. So we're going to start off with having every member of the TreeSisters team sort of come and share their story. We've been asking a lot of the TreeSisters within our community how they view philanthropy and how the practice is changing and evolving for them. And one of the first things that we do to start that discussion is to start with a giving story, something that's recently happened within your own philanthropy. And then we're going to start to transition and pull a little bit more at those stories. We're going to talk about where does our grief lie and how does that fuel our vision to be an honest philanthropic voice out in the world, whether we're giving $10 or 10 million to causes that we care about, whether we're giving 5 minutes or 500 minutes to things that we're caring about. And then again, going back to this idea of how are we truly becoming a restorer species and protecting life, whether it's part of our philanthropy, our activism, our day-to-day. So during this discussion, you'll be called upon to do a brief activity, a journey activity that will be led by Clare, so that we can start to embody what nature-based feminine philanthropy might feel like for each of us as sisters all over the globe. And then we'll explore together this idea of being connected or disconnected in our giving and offering of ourselves on behalf of life. So we are planning on unraveling our relationship to money, to each other, and to the planet. And so I'd like to just start off this entire visionary experiment that we're about to dive into from Maine to Sweden to California, and transition this over to Clare, who can just briefly share the TreeSisters story for those of you who might be brand new to our work and the movement that we're building and designing. So Clare, can I hand it off to you to start the journey today with our narrative?
Thank you, love. I will attempt to tell the story in about 60 seconds. Wouldn't that be impressive?
You can do it.
So for those of you who are new to TreeSisters, I would say she is a call directly from life. To those of us in the team, she is a being in her own right. I think she is nature basically asking humanity to wake up, and especially for women to recognize that we have a completely different energetic, psychological, hormonal makeup that is lunar, that is tidal, that is seasonal, and that gives us a much more readily accessible, instinctual, intuitive connection to what I would call natural intelligence. And TreeSisters was given to me in a car crash. It was given fully formed. And the basic request, the frightening one, was you have to reforest the tropics within 10 years. That wasn't a small thing to receive in the middle of a car crash. But the bigger one was you have to mobilize the women, that women are the missing piece, that women are the womb carriers and earth is womb, that women understands the cycle of life and death, that women and nature share a common history. And for us to realize that basically we have normalized taking our world, our planet, our resources, you could call them, but certainly Gaia, completely for granted, that has been normalized. And what was requested of us within TreeSisters was to find a way of normalizing giving back. So that instead of taking all the time, we start giving back as a new norm. And the request from Life in that car crash was to do it through trees. So TreeSisters is essentially an experiment in what does it take to help women step back and own our own uniqueness, our own feminine consciousness, bring that feminine consciousness to the world, and then direct it towards a common mission, which is basically reforesting the tropics as fast as we can through collective responsibility, so that we can start to mitigate the effects of climate change whilst we power down and start reducing our use of fossil fuels. I don't think that was 60 seconds, but it was pretty close.
Brilliant. Thanks, Claire. You know, it's so interesting hearing you share that, because I just came back from the Lilly School of Family Philanthropy's big conference on women in philanthropy. And the title of the conference and the whole through line was Dream, Dare, Do. And everyone was talking about, oh, we get the dreaming piece and we're doing the doing piece, but what does the dare element of it really mean? And how are we experimenting and daring to take risks and to become, I think, not only a little bit more visionary, but a little bit more powerful in the way that I think only women can be. And that means that we have to wildly reimagine our relationship to money and how we do this work. So I will start. I think the reason that I have found a home at TreeSisters and have become so just completely enthralled with what is being designed here and called to it in a very unique way is that I've spent a lot of time with people who practice what we call traditional philanthropy. And I feel called today to share the story of one woman. Her name was Megan, who I had worked with for quite some time in New York on a handful of different philanthropic projects that she deeply cared about, both on the humanitarian and the environmental sides. And there was always this disconnect for her. She served on many boards of directors. She was on advisory committees. She cut checks, had a powerful grant-making strategy within her family foundation. But there was always something within all of that that didn't feel like she was being transformed in the process of creating transformation. And so I think when I first started working with Megan, we had this dynamic conversation about, you know, why these constructs, why these systems. So much of what we were doing was still in a very, very masculine system for how we practiced philanthropy. And we just felt like something needed to break through. And so I'll never forget the day that Megan called me up and said, you know, I'm done feeling transactional, and what comes next? And that was actually a couple of months ago. And so we're on this journey together, and I'm bringing all these thoughts around nature-based feminine philanthropy to her. And just to kind of briefly define traditional philanthropy and what that looks like, it's very transactional. It addresses only short-term needs of organizations and causes across the world. There's often very little communication between donors and those that they're helping and those that they're supporting, and communication even with the earth for doing environmental causes. There's definitely a huge lack of transparency and how decisions are being made. It can often feel exclusive, especially to women. And it's very static. I have to say that one of the new things that I love talking about is creating a living resource system and resource flow. Sort of, why is there stagnant water sitting around when it can flow to make an incredible difference for all of us while we're here? So now that I've shared a little bit story and a little bit about what traditional philanthropy looks like in practice, I want us to start this conversation and explore some of the shifts we can make to more nature-based feminine philanthropy by having Clare start by articulating sort of, I know, Clare, you're on your own journey with this as well. So kind of just sharing a little bit of what this concept is starting to look like to you and why you feel it's so needed from what I just described as traditional.
Thank you, sweetheart.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I have to say one of the things I'd love to have come out of this call is for everybody to actually start to feel into their own definition of what feminine nature-based philanthropy is. Because no two things in nature are the same. And all of us are completely unique in our own feminine natures and in our own way of receiving and translating everything that moves through us. And so there's going to be a version of it that is mine. An aspect of that might touch others, but I think actually instinctually and intuitively, this is going to have its own definition for every woman that's here. So for me, we coined nature feminine based leadership as we increasingly realized that there was a completely different quality of intelligence available to us when we connected to nature. And so in my own journey with TreeSisters, I realized that whenever I'm actually afraid, which has been largely most of my life actually, when I'm afraid, it's because I'm in a state of disconnection. And when I'm disconnected, then my choices and my actions come from more of a reactive place. But when I can actually, I call it logging on, it's a very unfeminine, unnature-based term, but when I can actually like shift my consciousness, open the whole surface of my body, and start to feel my indivisibility from the natural world, which is not in a state of separation. The issue with humanity is our ego structures, but nature is not in a state of disconnection. It's in a state of perpetual sort of indivisibility, harmonization with each other. When I can actually open to merge with nature's energy, not only do I not feel afraid, I feel profoundly connected. I feel like I belong, and I can start to draw upon what I would call the intelligence or wisdom of life that has the bigger picture, of which I am a part, but that bigger picture is not something that my mind can very strongly connect to, whereas that greater intelligence of which I am a part knows exactly what I'm capable of, knows exactly what I've got, sees the woven, interconnected manifestation of my life, and therefore when I can tune into that, my knowing can come from a much, much deeper place, a much more instinctual place. It's not a fear-driven place. Sometimes the realizations that come from that place can feel quite frightening because they seem out of context to what my mind can grok. But generally speaking, whenever I've followed them, they've always been absolutely smack on. So I would say my version of feminine nature-based philanthropy is a set of philanthropic choices that arise from my indivisibility from life. So they arise from a place of much greater trust. They arise from a place of chosen reverence and love, where I know that how I think and how I perceive is entirely within my own choice. Like I can become aware of how I'm feeling, and I can choose to operate from lack, or I can choose to operate from a place of connectedness. From a place of connectedness, I feel not just that I can take care of nature, I can take care of the environment with my giving, I'm taking care of myself. It's like everything gets taken care of when you make choices from that connected place. So that's my version.
I love how you're.
What's yours?
I love that you said, so I'm always reminded of, I think I was at my first fancy gala event when I was like 22 years old, and I was sitting next to, I was sitting at this table, and I think that Jennifer and Peter Buffett were at it, and all these other incredible philanthropists, and Jennifer got up and did a speech, and she said, I don't ever want anyone in this room to forget that the root of the word philanthropy is love of humanity. And I love what we're doing now and what we're exploring now, because when you said chosen reverence, it's almost like that deepening of what love really means to you, more so than a token word that we hear so often in society and when we're making philanthropic decisions. So I appreciate you, Claire, for giving us that as a gift to start. So I'm going to call upon Sophie and Amrita. Sophie, I'd love if you could go first. All of this work, I think, for us in this discovery is rooted in story, because we have to draw upon our lived experiences to decide what comes next and how we find that intuitive meaning for all of us. So, Sophie, I'd love if you could share a moment for you or a short story for you where you're starting to discover this shift and what this new type of philanthropy practice can look like in your life.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, this conversation is thrilling to me. And the story that I feel moved to tell feels so woven into what you and Claire have shared already. And it's what I've learned about nature-based feminine philanthropy is that it's anchored in longing. And I guess I want to talk about the longing that called me to TreeSisters. which is I was madly in love with trees. I was making a film about trees and no one would give us any money for it whatsoever. And I was grant writing and it just wasn't working. And one day I walked home and I was feeling so frustrated that I actually fell on my knees next to my houseboat. I was living in Seattle in a houseboat, so it was very sleepless in Seattle. And I fell to my knees and this spontaneous prayer came out of me, which was, Gaia, I want to serve you. I can feel the passion of it now. I want to serve you. You've got to show me the way. You've got to show me the way. And in that moment, I touched the core of this longing that I've had to serve the feminine, to serve the forest my whole life. And then I came back to my office and Clare had posted a TreeSisters post on the Facebook page for our film. And I watched her video and burst into floods of tears again and said, I need to meet this woman. And what actually unfolded was I started to give a day a week to TreeSisters of my time, which feels like a very important part of this philanthropy conversation. And we also, even though we only had a small amount of savings, we just decided to give half of it to Clare because there was this thought inside of, what are my savings doing sitting in the bank when there is this woman with an incredible mission? And the mission wove me back into life in a really powerful way. And I think that's a key here too, that the giving, it made me feel part of something, made me feel whole, and made me feel like I belong. So longing and belonging feel like the core words for me.
I like the word belonging, and it's interesting because Clare mentioned it as well. And then a conversation I had a few weeks ago, I heard it keeps coming up, that sense of belonging and having a home within how you do this work. I also wanted to point out something that I think is just really beautiful is so often I think as women, we're told not to be emotional creatures, especially when it comes to everything that we do within our work and our lives. And another moment for me where I really kind of dug into this idea of feminine philanthropy, I was in Kenya in Kibera, which is a slum outside of Nairobi. And I was with a few funders from North America who had never before been there to witness the work. And this one woman just broke down completely on her knees, sobbing because she had never borne witness to what she was actually a part of. And she didn't feel welcomed by it until she was there in that moment. And afterwards, when we were in the van, there was another person in the van with us driving back from Kibera, and said to her, you really shouldn't get that emotional around this work because people will start to see it as a weakness. And I just remember being like, that's how she knew that was part of her belonging in that work. And she should have been. So thank you for that moment of just completely connecting and knowing that it was the space that you were supposed to be in. Amrita, do you want to share as well?
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you.
Great.
I wrote, there was a thing you said, Alyssa, a few minutes ago that I actually wrote down in front of me because it touched me so much, where you said being transformed by the process of making transformation. And that's really what my own journey with feminine philanthropy is. Similar to what Sophie and Clare said, for pretty much my entire adult life, I have decided that I am completely given to life, that I do feel a deep-seated reverence for everything that's alive, and that I'm in service to it. And a few years ago, I realized that one of my deepest passions in that is trees and forests. Ever since I was a child, I felt like the trees were my best friends, and they helped me through some of the hardest times of my life just by being there and letting me know that I was their family. And so several years ago, when I started really getting in the groove of having a good amount of personal abundance that I felt like I wanted to give back, I very deliberately chose that I wanted to give to trees. And so I started doing that. And that actually eventually led me to a meeting with Clare to talk about what TreeSisters was doing, because I was very, very careful about looking at the organizations I chose to give to and the impact of every dollar I was giving. Like, I really I would say I was using a mix of my intuition as well as my intelligence, and finding the resonant choices that also were practical. So anyway, Claire and I were talking, and she said, "Watch out, because now you're meeting TreeSisters, and TreeSisters will have her way with you." And and she has, to the point where this year I accepted the incredible honor of being asked to be the CEO, which means giving my whole life as a parent of this mission. And the other thing I learned this year about my philanthropy was something that you taught me, Alyssa, in the summer, where we were on retreat together, and Alyssa said that everyone is a philanthropist. If you're giving of your time, your talent, or your treasure to the transformation that you care about making in the world, you're a philanthropist. And even though I'd been giving money to causes I care about for years, I had never thought of myself as a philanthropist. I thought, oh, those are people who write checks for millions of dollars, right? So I'm not that. And as soon as he said that, I reframed my vision of myself, and I went away and I made my own giving plan. And I now do consider myself a philanthropist, both in the money I give and how I show up. And this is actually the core of it for me. I'm almost done. The core of it for me is that I am utterly committed to showing up, to saying yes to how life is calling me forward. For me, that's the ultimate definition of the feminine nature-based, is I'm listening to the call for life and I'm throwing myself in the flames. Yes. Okay, life, you can have your way with me. Yes, I'll do it.
I love that. Utterly committed to saying yes. Thanks, Amrita. I love what you share about the giving plan piece as well, because I think that for me, as someone who can be like a little too hyper intellectual about some of it, it is that balance of sort of the intuitive and then the intellect to really think through how you bring yourself to a place of balance to make these types of decisions. So thank you for bringing that into the conversation, because I do think that it's critical that we look at that and talk about that in our stories. So those stories, Claire and I'm ready for you to kind of share a little bit of your own story as well, and then launch us into our journey exercise as a collective. Again, all of us from, I'm trying to think of other places I heard, snowy South Dakota to Sweden to Maine. I'll just keep referencing Maine because I'm sitting here staring at the ocean. I'd love you, Claire, to kind of share your own story as well, and then transition us into this activity together as a sisterhood.
Well, I mean, I'll just share one theme for me, which is that my grief has been the gateway to my courage and my creativity again and again and again. And, you know, women are weak because we cry. Didn't anyone ever tell you that? And I think women are incredibly strong because we cry. You know, I think there is profound strength in being willing to feel the unfeelable. And it's only when we feel the unfeelable and let it rip its way through our bodies and are prepared to really feel and face it that we can stand in a much more coherent place and make different choices that arise from a place of complete willingness. And so I say this to everybody that I possibly can, because we've been taught to be so afraid of our tears, and we've been taught so much bullshit, excuse my language, about our tears. And actually, for me, there is no more profound gateway. TreeSisters wouldn't exist if I couldn't cry. You know, I have wept an ocean for this planet. And every time I face the possibility of the Gulf Stream ending and my country going under ice, or if I'm weeping for the Pacific Ocean and the radiation, or I'm weeping for the trees and for the newfangled mechanisms that they create to destroy them. Every time I do, there is a point at which I forget that I'm crying and my creativity kicks in. And I do see this period of our human history as the greatest invitation from life to fully astound ourselves, like really to have a quantum leap. But I think that quantum leap has to arise out of getting real, and that getting real has to arise out of our willingness to feel. And if we're willing to feel, there is a lot to grieve. But our grief is our love. It is our love. And so every act of grieving actually opens you to more of who you are. So there endeth the lesson. I sound like a preacher. Anyway, I feel like it is the most magical gateway. Every time I cry, I feel like I'm falling in love a little bit more with life and a little bit more with myself. And it's like the process of grieving is the process literally of coming back together. It's a process of coming into wholeness, facing yourself, facing everything. So the little practice I would like us all to drop into is an experiment, as everything we do at TreeSisters is. It's an experiment in feeling whether shifting from lack thinking into a sort of more radical abundance is a way to generate more energy and connection. And I say experiment because we're going to discover, yes, this works for me, no, this doesn't work for me. But either way, we're going to learn something. So the invitation is for everyone just to close your eyes. And we're going to need to feel our bodies to be able to track what's actually happening. So let's just all start with a few deep breaths. And on the in-breath, become aware of the outward surface of our bodies. And on the out-breath, feel like we're letting go and we're dropping down and in. And as you drop down and in on the out-breath, just become aware of the sensations in your body. Notice what's happening in your hands and your belly and your chest and your thighs. Notice your throat and your shoulders and the soles of your feet. Breathing in and receiving, breathing out and letting go and down. And then I'm going to invite us all to think about or call for that in nature that we most love. You may go straight to a place. You may feel it's a certain species or the ocean or the forests. Could be the soil, could be climate. They're all connected. Give yourself permission to turn towards one aspect of nature that in this moment has your heart. And I'm going to invite you to feel into your readiness to give to whatever that is. And it may be that you want to give monthly. We encourage monthly because we see it as a heartbeat, constant connection. But it may be that you'd want to give annually. But see what your figure is. See what arises in this moment. So for me, 50 arises. So that's obviously for me, monthly donation. Notice what's happening in your body when you sit with that amount of money for your chosen beneficiary in nature. And then I'm going to ask you to double it. Double that figure, hold that figure in your heart, and see how you feel. What happens in your body? What happens in relationship to your sense of connection to whatever aspect of nature you're giving to? And then I'm going to ask you to double it again. So for me, I'm up to 200. And again, what changes? What do you notice? I'm noticing that each time I up my giving, I feel closer to the thing that I'm giving to. It's almost like it's inside my chest now. Notice, are you going into constriction? Are you going into expansion? And then lastly, I'm just going to invite all of us to open our entire energy field to the circle of women that are all here trying on radical generosity to nature. Feel as if you are standing in circle. Feel as if you're holding hands, that you're entwining your intuition, your instinct, and your love with all these other women, that we are strengthening each other in circle. And notice whether that changes your relationship to your giving, to this amount that you're thinking of giving, you're trying on. And I know we're moving fairly fast. It's incredible how fast time flies, but I'd love to hear from any of you if you would like to just put in the chat box there anything that you noticed from that experiment. What happened for you? And while you're typing, I'm just curious, Amrita, Sophie, Alyssa, if you noticed anything in that experience.
Yeah, I had the same figure as you, and I found myself in front of the ocean, and as I doubled it, the same thing happened. It was like I was inside the ocean, and then when I doubled it again, something in me started to lift away. There was some kind of fear, I think, and then there was this pulling back down and in, and it was glorious. It was beautiful.
I too stood in front of the ocean, and the second time that Claire called us to double the amount, I started to sense that I wasn't alone standing on the beach, almost that I could feel others around me. And then when I doubled it again, I started to feel as if that circle had just kind of continued to widen, almost as if I was leading something I wasn't thinking I was meant to lead. It was lovely to feel a lightness as more were standing beside me.
I was standing in front of the lake, the beach right down the street from my house, and my first number was, well, actually, first I didn't have a number. First, when I felt my longing to give, it was myself that I wanted to give, like my presence in every single thing that I do, and my, again, just my yes, to the point where I feel like I would die for nature. Like my life is hers and it's on the line because I'm so given. And then when you made the suggestion of the monthly number, then that came up for me, and it was 200. And I doubled it, that was fine. Then I doubled it again and I was at 800, and I was kind of like, holy shit. Whoa. And then I felt like, okay, that makes me, I didn't think I could be even more given, but that makes me even more given. And I'm gonna have to sit with that for a while and look at what's there. And then when you called us to feel ourselves woven in with all the women, and I especially feel all the women here on this call with us all over the world, Oh my gosh, I can feel it now too. It's like energetically, I feel your roots intertwine with my roots. And the moment that we all consciously do that together, I do feel infinitely stronger. And it's like, this is the thing that women know how to do. This is what we've done since there have been women on this planet. We know how to work together as a sisterhood. Yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to share some of the things that are coming in. And I'm also going to just own up to something, which is, you know, everybody thinks I'm the tree woman. But actually, I just found it fascinating that three of us were standing in front of either the ocean, well, all of us in front of water. And my primary love on this planet are the rivers and the waters and the oceans. And I'm committed to reforesting our planet, because to me, that's the only way that I can get the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere so that the oceans don't turn to acid, and that we can re-engage the groundwater so that we can actually have our rivers and our streams. So it's really interesting, you know, where we find ourselves when we let ourselves get out of here and go to our hearts, where our hearts lead. So from Lisa, I felt so much stronger together, much less fear. I grew roots. My vision grew roots. Ruthie says, as my generosity increased, I curled closer around my moss-covered moss, cradling her as if it increased, and I felt others curling around my back, such sweet support. From Michelle, there were three things that came to mind: whales, trees, and birds, all calling to me. The number kept growing, and I kept growing and feeling part of all that is. From Steen, I saw a rose and then rain started falling. I couldn't see how I could give to this, so I felt a bit lost, but then I realized I want to give to beauty, the beauty of life. The number increased without any real resistance. When I joined all of us as sisters, the number doubled without Claire saying anything. Francis says, for me it was soil, so often ignored. And as I doubled the amount, I relaxed more and felt as if I was just sinking into our beautiful Mother Earth. From Teen, she says, I felt a physical expansion as I increased the amount. Lauren says she was in front of the ocean too. Yes, Maura, when I doubled my amount, I felt happy, open, and more relaxed, which was the total opposite of how my mind thinks about giving more. Isn't this extraordinary? This other heart-based wisdom that we have got direct access to. When I doubled that, I felt fear, which changed into closer connection to TreeSisters and growing trees, then excited at the possibility of giving this. Being in the circle of women, I opened even more. My body relaxed more, and I felt reassured that I'm supported. Gosh, there's so many coming in here. We're not going to have time to read them all. Janderson says, I was in a river, many currents running into one large, surging stream. And Lynn says, connecting to my generosity revealed my heart, connecting more deeply to Gaia and other women. Tears arose with happiness, feeling home. And I just want to say to that, you know, to all of you, thank you so much for sharing. And isn't it extraordinary that when we weave ourselves into life and allow ourselves to give, where we put our money is like where we put our intention, where we put our energy, it creates connection. The more we give of ourselves or our funds or whatever it is we can give, the greater our connection, not just to that thing, but to ourselves. So I'll hand it back over to you, Alyssa.
I have so much gratitude for everyone on the call sharing their experiences, because I think that every time I do an activity like this, mine changes a little bit too, depending on where I might be personally. And so I think that I invite everyone who did that with us today to revisit this space and to call yourself to a space of prayer and silence, and to try this activity every couple of weeks or every couple of days in a way that really works for you, because you can start to sort of know your own rhythm and your own space around it. So thank you, Claire, for leading us in that space and time. We have some movements to build, and I find it so interesting that all of us were somehow in relationship to water during that activity, because I am a big fan of no longer check cutting and grant making, but actually breaking open resource flow. And how do we allow ourselves to heal from the grief in our life and the grief that comes around money and the frustration that comes around all of our resources that are somehow being taken away from us, and really channel it towards building movements for change and movements on behalf of life and on behalf of the planet. So Clare, I'd love to transition to you with a little bit of a call to action today, both for everyone as an individual here, but also share a little bit about what we're building and designing at TreeSisters.
Thank you, sweetheart. I just want to read one last thing here from Palakaji. I hope I've said your name right. I felt overwhelming grief as I found myself as the whole planet and imagined every human, like every other species, contributing to the ever complexifying, ever resilient, ever regenerative web of beauty. And that as we do that, we finally are in right relationship with life. Thank you so much for that. It makes me want to weep. And yes, TreeSisters, we're building, we're growing, we're at quantum leap stage. But I think what I'd like to say first is women are needed. We're needed now more than ever. Our wisdom is needed more now than ever. Our love is needed more now than ever. There are some of us with an extraordinary capacity to give huge resources. I would love to help unlock those resources on behalf of life. And that is all life, whether that is the forests or whether that is the oceans or our species. Or our soil, which I wish we could call soul, because I'm so fed up of being in America where people call it dirt. And so whatever it is, wherever we go in our hearts, when we let ourselves drop into our own bodies, which are part of nature, that we let our giving flow in whatever way feels the most true to our hearts. And as I said, my reason for doing the trees and giving my life to the trees is because that's my way of giving back to the waters and trying to protect the waters. And so at TreeSisters, we are, we got to our goal of 1 million trees a year last month. We've just plotted our path to 1 billion trees a year by the end of 2020, which is an exponential growth curve that is somewhat knee-knocking and nail-biting. Actually, it's hugely terrifying. And it's an experiment. And what I know about that is there's no question in my mind, even if we don't know how to do it yet, we have to do it. It's the only sort of thinking that makes sense in relationship to what we're facing, especially with the political situation as it is. So I would love to invite everybody here to actually, at some point today, go to our fundraising page, our campaign page, which is treesisters.org/ignite. Because we are trying to ignite a movement, because we are trying to create this normalization of giving and this consciousness shift that recognizes our indivisibility from life. And we're searching for those men and women who want to come in behind us and lift us up by helping provide the level of funding that we need to grow the organization and launch a campaign this year specifically to get to 1 million trees a month, which is a 12 scale up, which again is, a little bit nail biting. But I have a team that are given completely to life and who working with is an exceptional privilege. And we are in service. We're in service to you. We're in service to the trees. We're in service to the oceans. We're in service to the climate. And we're in service to the reinstatement of the feminine and to the remembering in women of who and what we really are and what we can achieve together, which we're just, scratching the surface of after the greatest women's march, the greatest demonstration in human history. Women are a force to be reckoned with. And that force is a force of power and love and truth that is grounded in relationship and indivisibility and the desire to protect the life that we ourselves are creating. So I'll just say again, please go to treesisters.org/ignite. On that page, you will find our invitation that expresses exactly what we're doing this year, and also another document that shows where all the money would be going. And know that if trees are part of your passion, or if the ocean is part of your passion, we would love it if all of us could sit and feel for those golden threads, those threads that link us to people for whom this is a direct match for their passion. This is a love field, and we're creating a love circle. And the people that we are longing to find and call into circle with us are those who are in full service and love and reverence and realize that you have a profound role to play, whether that is as a philanthropist like me, who is now apparently going to give 200 a month, which is quite a lot, or you're Amrita giving 800 a month and deep breathing while she figures out how to do that, or whether you can give in the tens of thousands or the hundreds of thousands. We need you. So right now we are looking to raise £500,000. That's over $600,000. And the first chunk of that has actually come in, which is extraordinary. 100,000 came in last week. So we know we can do it. And we are calling and calling and calling from our deepest hearts. So that is just one place that if you want to step into circle and sisterhood, you can do that with us now. And as I say, your intuition will know exactly where your giving can go. And don't forget, if you feel yourself going into contraction, come into your heart, let yourself feel your grief and double it, and then double it again. And from that place of deep connection, see really how your giving can draw you into deeper connection with all that is. And with that, I'll pass it back over to you, Alyssa.
Thank you so much, Claire. I feel like it's such a gift for the space that I now occupy in sisterhood with you all. And so I invite you also on the fundraising page. You'll have the opportunity to book time with either myself, Claire, or Amrita to talk through how you really want to envision your philanthropy, not only within TreeSisters, but as a whole. So we're here to be sisters first and stewards second, in a way that makes sense for you. So just know that this is also something we're growing and designing within the community, because the four of us are doing it already together. And I think finding that it's making it easier to see that we can do this and that we will. And I am so excited for 2020 and a billion trees like you have no idea. So I'd love to take a few minutes if anyone wants to type in any questions into the Q&A. We have about 7 or 8 more minutes to go. Any of us can respond at this point in time. And then I also invite Sophie and Amrita if you want to share any last minute thoughts from today's call that you're having. And then I can just conclude by Cher will bring us into a sacred circle to have some gratitude before we sign off today.
I'm actually feeling really emotional right now, which Claire knows is something I've been working on this year, letting myself feel everything, because so often my impulse is to numb or distract, not really go into the depth of it. And sometimes it's so much when I feel my connection with the earth and I feel the depth of love, and also for me, I feel rage at how have you ever heard that if you want to be really cruel to something, you ignore it? And that's what I feel like the majority of humanity is still doing, although I feel that those of us who are deeply in love with the earth, our numbers are growing. At least in my life, I'm finding that to be true. But I feel rage at the vast number of people who are ignoring her and disrespecting her and taking advantage of her, which is really self-abuse, because we don't have a body without her. And I also feel compassion, but right now I'm just in that raw, wordless, conceptless. And it's funny because it actually opened in me, Claire, when you said that you wish people called it soil instead of dirt. And all of a sudden I thought, whoa, the soil is all of our ancestors, all the trees, all the animals, all the human bodies, all the bodies of living things that have ever decomposed in billions of years. Our ancestors, that's the soil. So that, yeah, that's enough.
So ending on a high note. I'm thrilled for your emotion, Amrita. I'm thrilled for your emotion.
Thank you.
What I'm really feeling is a incredibly strong sense of sisterhood right now. like it's very strong in my body is here. And it's all the people who are writing in, and I especially want to name and thank Maura, Ruthie, Gloria, Lauren and Wanda, who are all contributing incredibly to TreeSisters as part of our volunteer team, and honor you. And I'm sure many of our other of the women in the team are here too. And I feel called to share that I feel that the sisters part of TreeSisters, the sisterhood part of TreeSisters, is one of our unique offerings to the world, and it's one of the things that drew me to TreeSisters. And that when we come together as women, and Alyssa, you spoke about this, when we come and gather together, we're able to catalyze some of this grief that you're talking about and the rage that you're talking about, Amrita, to allow ourselves to feel it. It's so much easier to feel it when we're together, to allow ourselves to feel it and then allow that to transform into action for what we love, an action that makes sense of our longing and makes sense of our pain. And I feel like we're sitting inside one of those experiences right now. And it's just epic that I get to live my life doing this. And I'm so grateful. And there were a couple of questions too. Janderson was asking the fundraising page URL again. So that's www.treesisters.org/ignite.
Do we have any other questions that people would like to?
There's not questions. Julie said she's in a tight spot financially. Is there any other way to contribute? Yes is the answer. And I mean, you can contribute simply by your depth of presence and your depth of love. I mean, to me, one of the greatest things any of us can do is actually be willing to feel what's going on. Because if we can actually feel what's going on and not numb off to it, which we are taught to do, if we can stay open, it will unlock you in ways that you can't even imagine. And that could unleash your creativity in a way, again, that you may not even have conceived of. I love that word for us women. And to trust that. And if you really want to contribute to TreeSisters, then we can find a way for that to happen. There is an amazing volunteer team. Sophie heads it up. There are different ways to give your gifts, and actually that's a large part of TreeSisters that we're working on right now, is all the different ways to contribute, because women want to contribute, and as you say, it's talent and treasures. It's not just on money. So there's other comments coming in here.
Let's give people our email address as well, our public inbox. I'm just going to put it in the chat here as well. It's info@treesisters.org. So if you have rising tides coming through you, that's where you can reach out.
Yeah.
I'd also like to respond to a message from Lisa. And she says, just an idea, but there are so many women's groups meeting tomorrow, holding space for the new moon. And it would be amazing if those women involved could talk about TreeSisters and help spread the word. And I absolutely love that idea, Lisa. And that is part of the vision, is that we're this, how we're discovering that the roots in a forest actually communicate with each other and share nutrients, that we in our different sisterhood circles can be sharing the nutrients that we're talking about here. And I also want to invite you, if you don't know, Lisa, that we have our own new moon gathering for all TreeSisters, for all women who are giving monthly to the trees. So you can come and be part of that too.
This has been such a beautiful experience and such a beautiful time to have with my sisters and my team. You all have my heart so much, and I have so much gratitude for thinking about the revolution that we're doing in the world of philanthropy and what comes next. So I think, Claire, I know that you want to close today, but I just want to invite everyone. I shared this with Amrita last summer, but also sit down and look at your time, talent, and treasure as a 3-part model of all the resources and gifts that you have to bring to this work. And really, really think on how you can be that network weaving goddess, or that brilliant artist, or that stellar feminine entrepreneur, and be a part of this with us. So Claire, I'll hand it over to you to do a closing today. And this is my first webinar with the TreeSisters community. So much gratitude and love to you all. I am here and I am open to serve. So Thank you for
Thank
being
you so much, Alyssa and Amrita and Sophie, and all these comments still pouring in here. From Heart, she says, I recently shared the prayer for the forest in a number of groups with a tremendous number of likes. And just because Sophie mentioned the forest floor, I just wanted to let you all know, if you go to the Tree Sisters Facebook page and go to our events, you'll find a link to the prayer for the forest, where we actually explored what it was like to become part of the forest floor, where we literally give of ourselves into the collective emergence of all of us and then seed our prayers for the forest. It's a very deep, very beautiful, totally unique experience that we would love to share with you. There are so many different ways that you can get involved with Tree Sisters and get nourished, the sort of nourishment that can actually bring you more closer to who you are and help you find what your giving actually looks like. So I'm going to end even with the same way that we started, which is in sacred poetry. So I'm going to invite all of us to come back into circle and hold hands and come back into our hearts and close our eyes and feel each other, not just drift off, but actually give this moment that we have all shared together its full presence and its full completion. We're learning together, we're evolving together, we're permission for each other. Our togetherness deeply, deeply matters. So I invite you to take these words into your heart, and when the poem is complete, to bow in whatever way makes sense to you, and then to spend the day, if you can, reflecting on the beauty that you've experienced here today. This dream that is ours, this dream that the world can wake up to itself through rapturous respect and radical reverence. This yearning for love, this unfurling request for tender living, this is not too much to ask. For this is the way of the soul, when we let sunlight ripple in our mind and the breezes teach us how to touch. When we let the gaze of the deer fall softly into our eyes and the salmon's steady returning remind us how to bow to our beginnings. When the forest floor finally shows us how to share and the steady patience of the trees seeps into the curve of our own spines, we shall fall softly into the dance of our own becoming and recognize ourselves in all things living. But first, we must bow and allow the remembering that paves the path home to reverence. With love and gratitude to all of you for giving us your time, may you be touched and may you follow your deepest longing on behalf of life.